Okay, I'm gonna call the executive committee meeting to order at 12:02 p.m. And before we get started, I would just like to respectfully acknowledge that I'm calling in from the unceded territories of the Métis and Kwantlen First Nations, and that the work that we would typically be doing in person at the SFSS is located on the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, which includes the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Coquitlam, and Katzie nations. Unceded means that these territories have never been handed over, sold, or given up by these nations, and that we are currently situated on occupied territories. And it's also really critical to acknowledge that we're all calling in from different locations. Not all of us are working from these nations, Burnaby Mountain. And so it's really critical that we're all taking the time to acknowledge the lands in which we're all individually and uniquely located on right now, and recognizing and acknowledging the stewards of the land in due course. So we'll move on to section 3 of our agenda today, which is roll call of attendance. And I guess before we get into the meeting, I do just want to acknowledge and express gratitude to the fact that this is our first executive committee meeting of the year. It's very exciting. I did want to say that if at any point there are any questions about meeting procedure or like Robert's rules or anything, please just like stop me and ask. Like, this is totally acceptable, the time to do it. And I am more than happy to go slower than usual or answer any questions. So we'll move to roll call of attendance, and I'm just going to call on your position, and when I do so, if you're able to share your name, your pronouns, and any access needs that you might have, that would be fantastic. And access needs being anything that we can do to make this meeting more accessible for you so you can participate to the fullest of your abilities, or anything you just want members of the committee to know about you being present in this space. So I'll start off with myself. Hi, everyone. My name is Gabe Leosis. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm the president and chair of the executive committee. And my access needs are, well, one of my access needs might be, I might be like trying to eat my lunch in between when I'm speaking, just because I have no breaks today. And I guess that's just the life of a student. But other than that, my access needs are met. And we'll move on to our vice president, internal and organizational development.
Hi, everyone. My name is Corbett. Pronouns are he, him, his. Access needs. I have a noisy construction site not too far from my place. So if you need me to repeat anything or speak up, please let me know.
Thank you. We have our VP Finance and Services.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Albus, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And all my access needs are met. It's just that I have a sore throat, so if you need me to repeat anything, please let me know in the chat and I'll repeat that for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. We have our VP University and Academic Affairs.
Hey everyone, my name is Serena. My pronouns are she, they. For access needs, I'm joining on my computer today, so I'll probably drop out once or twice, but I'll be right back.
Thanks. Thank you. Vice President, External and Community Affairs.
Okay, everyone, it's Matt. My pronouns are he, him, his. My accessibility needs, I might be awaiting a phone call, so I'm kind of on standby right now. So I'll turn off my camera, that's why.
No worries, thank you. Our Vice President, Equity and Sustainability is going to be joining us momentarily. She has just let me know she's going to be a couple moments late. And lastly, for executives, we have our Vice President, Events and Student Affairs.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jess. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm just going to look this way most of the meeting because I'm taking minutes. And then I do have to leave at 3 exactly for another meeting to go to.
We'll move on to society staff now, and we have our administrative assistant.
Hi Hi everyone, my name is Brianna, she, her pronouns, and I will be muted and camera off for the meeting, but congrats and thanks for being here.
Thank you. And then we have a guest here today. Bahar, would you like to do an introduction as well?
Hi folks, my name is Bahara Jokar. I am a program manager with Student Care and will be giving you folks a quick presentation during today's meeting. My preferred pronouns are she, her, they, them. And my accessibility needs, I do have some construction in the background, so I do apologize for that. And if you need me to repeat anything, or if you need me to talk a little bit slower, because I tend to talk pretty quickly when I'm going through my presentations, please let me know.
Thank you so much. All right, have I, oh, we also have another guest with us today. Priyanka, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone, my name is Priyanka. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm just gonna have my camera off and be muted. I'm kind of just here to observe today. But yeah, congrats everyone on the new term and getting elected, yeah.
Thank you so much. Anyone that I might have missed? I don't believe so, just doing a scan of the screen. All right, thank you everyone for those introductions, and we'll move on into our consent agenda portion today. And so we have two motions under the consent agenda. At this point, I will ask for unanimous consent on the consent agenda unless there is any objections to anything, any of the contents of the consent agenda. I know there are a couple of amendments that people want to make to the agenda, so I think we're probably going to move the adoption of the agenda out of the consent agenda and onto the regular portion. Other than that, the only thing left then is the adoption of the minutes. Is that all? Okay, fantastic. So in that case, the consent agenda is adopted as amended, having removed the adoption of the agenda onto the regular portion of the agenda. And I just noticed Marie has joined us now. Would you actually like to do name, pronouns, access needs before we keep moving on?
Yes. Hey everyone, my name's Marie. My pronouns are she, her, hers. My access needs are met. However, I may mute my mic at times because my family is very loud. But that's all.
Thank you very much. We just finished the consent agenda portion of the agenda, and we're just the adoption of the agenda got taken out because there are multiple amendments that people want to make to today's agenda. So we will go into that right now. So I'll read the motion. Be it resolved to adopt the agenda as presented. Is there a mover for this motion?
Matt?
Vice President Provost moves. Is there a seconder?
Marie.
That's moves.
I think I heard Vice President Haddad first. So please list yourself in the speakers list if you have any amendments to the agenda to make. All right, Vice President Provost, you're on the speakers list first.
Thank you. Yes, I wanted to amend the agenda to include a motion that is titled Executive Committee 2021-2022 Merchandise, and I will copy and paste the motion in the chat.
Thanks very much. Vice President Baines, you're next.
I just wanted to amend the agenda to include a discussion item titled Campus Public Safety Initiatives.
Fantastic, thank you. Vice President Gildersleeve.
I'd like to amend the agenda to include a discussion item on the upcoming audit.
Awesome, thank you. And Vice President Haddad.
Yes, I want to amend the agenda to include a motion that is titled Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, Two-Spirit and Trans Statement of Support. And I will copy and paste the motion and title in the chat.
Thank you. Is there any other amendments to be made to this agenda today? Have I missed any in the speakers list? No. All right. So seeing the speakers list is exhausted, we have 4 amendments on the floor. We'll take that all as one batch, one amendment to the main motion. So I can move that batch of amendments to the agenda. Would anyone like to second?
Matt?
Vice President Provost seconds, thank you. We'll put the amendments to a vote. So all those in favor, please raise your hands now.
Where do you find the raise your hand function on a computer?
Oh, that's a good, so it's either under the participants tab, and then there should be a raise hand function there, or under reactions. And then there should either be there. Cool.
Perfect, thank you.
No worries. All right, I'm gonna lower everyone's hands, and that motion, that amendment is carried unanimously. So let's just move back to the main motion, which reads, be it resolved to adopt the agenda as amended. Okay, so we're on the main motion now. Are there any other amendments or discussion on the agenda? All right, seeing none, I'm going to put the question to a vote. So again, be it resolved to adopt the agenda as amended. All those in favor, please raise your hands now. All right, I'm going to lower all your hands now, and seeing no opposition, that motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. And now we'll move into our presentations, and we have a presentation from Student Care. So Bahar, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Would it be possible for me to do a screen share? Do I have those privileges currently?
I believe you should. Let me know if you don't, though.
Okay, I do. That's awesome. We'll just dive right in. Can everybody see the share screen? We're all good? No issues?
Yep.
Awesome. Beautiful. So thank you folks so much for inviting me to join you today. It is such a pleasure to be here. I am so excited to be able to join you on your very first executive committee meeting. It feels like such an honor. Today, I will be giving you a high-level overview of the extended health and dental plan. And the intention here is for you folks to ask questions, if you have any thoughts, and more so we'll be talking about kind of what's to come in the year ahead. So with that, I actually, for some reason, my screen's being a little bit wonky, so hopefully I can correct this. Just take this from the top again. Okay, perfect, much better. Okay, so who is Student Care? Student Care was founded in 1996 as a student startup. So our founder and CEO, Lev Bookman, was a former student leader at McGill Student Association. And what started out essentially as a summer project when he was in law school has now turned into what is Canada's largest provider of student health and dental plan services. We have the privilege of serving over 1 million students nationally, working with over 100 student associations and over 85 post-secondary institutions. So you're going to get a chance to work with myself and a number of my colleagues throughout the year, but beyond just the couple of friendly faces that you'll see, I just like to note that I'm really grateful to have over 140 colleagues, mostly based out of Montreal, because that's where our head offices are, who work with us in essentially managing your extended health and dental plan and in supporting you folks in providing this service to your members. So like I mentioned, you'll be seeing myself and as well as the folks that work out of our on-campus office, which will be located in the new sub, which we are very excited to be moving into and working out of hopefully very shortly. But beyond that, under normal circumstances, we would be inviting a couple of executives to join us in Montreal for our annual stakeholder meetings. Unfortunately, due to COVID, those were postponed last year, and this year they will be held virtually. So a couple of you have received an invitation from me this morning. We really hope that you can join us. And if not, we would really love it if you could send a couple of proxies in your place. Beyond that, Student Care prides itself on being an inclusive employer. We're constantly working and ensuring that we are promoting a respectful and an inclusive work environment. So we are part of a collective of companies across Canada that actively participate participate in Pride at Work, as well as recently having launched our Student Care Social Collective, which is the not-for-profit branch of our organization. And you will be learning more about that throughout the year and hopefully participating in some of the initiatives that we will be launching nationally. So what do we do? What is our role and function? We have the privilege of being both your consultant as well as your third-party administrator. I think it's really important to note that we are not the insurance company. That is an interchangeable piece. So in the last couple of years, actually, the SFSS has transitioned from their former insurer, which was Desjardins, to Pacific Blue Cross. And we've worked with you folks in adjusting the underwriting methodology of your plan. So that there's a lot of really moving pieces every year that get evaluated by both the executive committee and or the health and dental plan committee, depending on what's happening in that year. But with myself, you'll typically see all of the little like consulting things that we mention here. So if I was to give you a metaphor of an iceberg, the tip of the iceberg is what the committee and the executives tend to see more frequently, which is a lot of the reports that we will present with respect to how your members are engaging with the extended health and dental plan, and a lot of the high level overview, along with supporting you folks in making key policy decisions regarding the plan. And then everything underneath the iceberg is kind of like the meat and bones of what happens. So that's everything that happens on the back end, which includes the communications that get customized for your plan, the management of our in-house call center based out of Montreal, which is there to support your members in terms of supporting and responding to any questions that come up regarding claims, general questions about the policy, as well as the data transfers that occur between us and the university, and making sure that all of the eligible members on the plan are enrolled onto the plan. And then lastly, managing our national networks, which is a cost-saving mechanism for students. So in its entirety, our responsibilities include managing the student experience when it comes to the SFSS Extended Health and Dental Plan. And a couple key things regarding plan fundamentals. So this might be a little kind of repetitive for some of you. You might be very familiar with this already, but I find it's always helpful to just kind of go over year as a refresher and a reminder. So why do we have a group plan versus, allowing for students to opt in should they choose to have access to the benefits that are available through the Extended Health and Dental Plan? Well, as I'm sure you all know, the Extended Health and Dental Plan was set up via referendum. So it's a mandated fee that allows you folks to operate the plan as a collective, like a group plan, the same way that you would have available to you if you were an employer, if you were an employee of a company. And what ends up happening when you have a group plan is that it tends to be significantly less expensive. And it allows for students to access benefits despite their age, despite their biological and self-identified gender, as well as to receive services for pre-existing conditions. So it's significantly more cost-effective to come together and use your purchasing power as a group versus for individuals to go out and to purchase these exact same host of benefits on their own. There are 4 key areas of coverage on the Extended Health and Dental Plan, and it's really important to note that this plan is meant to supplement everything that is not provided by provincial healthcare. So this plan is meant to provide supports for the 4 areas that are mentioned here that would not be covered by BCMSP or whatever other provincial healthcare program that you might be registered under. So that includes health coverage, dental coverage, vision, and travel. For health, we're talking about prescription drugs, paramedical practitioners like massage, physio, chiro. Dental, we have checkups, cleanings, wisdom tooth extractions, etc. For vision, you folks have access to eye exam coverage, glasses and contact lens coverage. And funny enough, you also get access to laser eye surgery coverage. It's a small amount relative to the overall cost, but it's still helpful for students who plan on incurring those expenses while they're a student. And then lastly, you have travel coverage. The travel coverage is really unique in that it is very much designed to be for a student population. So, you can travel for up to 120 consecutive days, as well as have the coverage extended for any academic trips. So if you're going abroad for exchange or for a co-op session or whatever the case may be, as long as you have documentation that is for academic purposes, you can actually have it extended for the entire duration of that trip, as well as 120 days before and 120 days after. And over the COVID months, we actually were able to enhance our travel coverage as a direct response to kind of what was happening. And I'll go over that later in the presentation as well. A couple of key dates for you folks to be aware of are the change of coverage period dates. So there are 2 intake periods that have automatic enrollment in the extended health and dental plan, which are the fall COC period and the winter COC period. During these change of coverage periods, students who are in those intake periods, so if you start your studies in September or if you start your studies in January, you have the opportunity to opt out of the extended health and dental plan if you have alternative coverage. And so it's really important for students to complete their opt-outs during this time, and a lot of communication is formed and dispersed to ensure that students are aware that this period exists. As well as being able to opt out, you can also enroll dependents. So if you are an eligible member of the SFSS and have access to the extended health and dental plan, you can enroll dependents, meaning a partner, a spouse, or dependent children. A couple quick things with respect to your plan cost and how it's determined. This is pretty high level, and we'll be going over this in far more detail and depth when we actually do the financial exercises pertaining to your extended health and dental plan. But for the purposes of today's presentation, I think it's just helpful to know what drives the cost of the plan and how is the cost of the plan determined year over year. So this is a nice little visual that we have. In the first little circle, we have projected claims. And that's just to say that the bulk of the cost of your plan is driven by student usage. The more students use the plan, the more the cost of the plan is driven, essentially. In the second little circle, we have inflation trends. Inflation is a little bit unique when it comes to extended health and dental plans, is that it varies compared to CPI and other kind of inflationary indexes that you might be familiar with. On a traditional kind of employee-employer extended health and dental plan, we'll see inflation anywhere in the range of 15 to 20%, whereby on a student plan, because you're replaced by a younger version of yourself on an annual basis, you get to benefit from slightly reduced inflation when it comes to the plan, which is anywhere in the realm of between 5 to 8% year over year. And what drives inflation on a student health and dental plan is really the different kind of changes that we see in terms of habits and services that come onto the market. So one example that's really common on a student health and dental plan, I'd say, is the change in trends for mental health services. So over the last decade, we've seen a major shift in accessibility and the reduction of stigma when it comes to mental health services. So an increase in psychological benefits has been really significant and has had an impact on your overall usage. Another really common thing is the introduction of new hormonal contraceptives. So the introduction of hormonal IUDs onto the market, which were fairly recent, as well as like Gardasil, which is kind of really specific to this demographic, are a couple examples of medications and services that have come onto the market that have an impact on the student population. And then lastly, you have your administrative expenses, and those expenses are essentially the costs of having your claims processed by the insurer, as well as the fees that you pay student care in both being your consultant as well as your third-party administrator. A couple key definitions for us just to be aware of. So when we refer to premiums, we're talking about the dollar amount that's remitted to the insurance company for the host of benefits that are available to your members. And when we talk about plan fees, we talk about essentially a dollar amount that students will see on their tuition statement. One thing for you folks to kind of be aware of in a project that I imagine will be coming up for you this year is that the extended health and dental plan will likely need to go to referendum for a fee adjustment, which is something that we've been discussing for the last couple of years. But it's you folks have a very unique setup in that every couple of years you need to go back to referendum to allow for an inflationary adjustment to be made. So that's just something to be kind of cognizant of. So networks, I mentioned this briefly at the start of the presentation, but it's really important to note because it does save students quite a bit of money. So the student care networks were one of the core services that we developed when we initially launched the company. Funny enough, our former legal name as a company used to be studentcare.net/work. So it was like the .com era, and we thought it was really fun. But essentially what it means and why it's so important is that our national networks are an opportunity for students to go to practitioners that choose to give our members an additional discount. So students are not obligated to go to these practitioners, but if they choose to go to these practitioners, they tend to save quite a bit of money, and they are available to you wherever you are in Canada. So depending on the city that you're in, if you're going home for the summer, if you're not based out of Vancouver, you might have service providers kind of in and around the area that you'll be staying. But an example of how the networks work, so for dental specifically, which is a pretty significant cost driver on the plan, your insured portion for preventative services is 80%. So that's, again, like cleanings and checkups. You can get that 80% essentially at any designated dental clinic. in Canada. However, if you choose to go to one of our dental practitioners, you can save 20%, which is quite nice. And it tends to save you quite a bit of money for overall coverage at 100% for preventative services. And it's adjusted obviously depending on the category that you're getting services for. And it also applies to vision care, chiro, physio, massage. Being in Metro Vancouver, we get to benefit from the competition that's in our city. And so there's quite a few practitioners willing to come on to kind of get that student population, whereby we find that in smaller cities, it tends to be a little bit harder to find practitioners willing to come on board. So, excuse me. So the COVID-19 response. So we're really proud to say that we were able to transition the majority of our operations to remote work while maintaining all of our data infrastructure and our security infrastructure, which is really awesome. And that's including our call center in Montreal. In addition to that, over the summer months, we were able to actually implement, summer of 2020, I should say, we were able to implement a retroactive international student opt-out period for the current policy year, recognizing and acknowledging that the international student experience was going to be very different this year. So for international students who do not come back to Canada by July, they can essentially opt out of the extended health and dental period for the current policy year. And we've done all the back work with the university and making sure that we have all the appropriate data and facilitating this opt-out. And then in addition to that, we introduced the new enhanced travel service, which we're quite excited about. And the changes that came to the travel service actually started way before COVID. So we started originally evaluating the travel service when the Hong Kong protests started in 2019. So at the time, we had quite a few students across the country who were on our extended health and dental plans who happened to be in Hong Kong when the protests began, which led to a number of questions of the status of their travel coverage, especially for those students who were there long-term for academic purposes. So that was kind of one of the things that kind of started the conversation. But then when COVID hit, we realized we needed to evaluate the health and dental plan really firmly, and we were able to kind of kick it into high gear and get those benefits implemented ASAP. But the new enhancements essentially allow for students to travel if there is a level 3 travel advisory. We were able to enhance our trip interruption and trip cancellation coverage to increase both those dollar amounts so that they essentially were adjusted to keep up with inflation and to become far more robust than what a student would get if they were to go to market and try to purchase that coverage on their own. And then lastly, we were also able to introduce and remove the pandemic exclusions and to provide support for COVID-19 for students traveling abroad. So if a student was, again, in a country with a level 3 travel advisory and they experienced COVID symptoms and they had to self-isolate, the trip interruption, trip cancellation could support them in that case, both with either supporting them for quarantining coverage and or supporting them in coming back if they needed to, which was quite exciting. So next steps, we have quite a busy year ahead of us. This year was a little bit different compared to our regular and routine meeting schedule. But typically this is the calendar year for us and the events that we need to kind of keep in mind when getting ourselves organized. So between May to August is a lot of preparatory work for the September fall change of coverage period and the intake period. So preparing communications, confirming orientation events. I've actually been working very closely with the SFU International Student Services. We've done quite a few orientation sessions via Zoom this year with them, as well as any other department on campus who reaches out and wants to coordinate events. If you folks happen to be on campus this year, we are preparing as well to be available and to be present on campus to support your members with any incoming and or executive, events that might be coming up for the fall term. In October, it tends to be mental health month for most campuses, and there's a lot of programming that happens there. So we like to be on campus to help support and to promote the services that are available through the extended health and dental plan. Obviously, we take the lead from you folks. So whatever you deem to be appropriate, we're happy to support you. In November, we will present a couple of key reports, which are the change of coverage report, which is a snapshot of how your members engaged with us during the change of coverage period, as well as the annual claims report, which is the report that gives us a snapshot of how your members engaged with the extended health and dental plan for the previous policy year. And then in December, we kind of start the cycle over again with any orientation events that need to occur. So we do all the organization in December in preparation for January. And in February, which is something that we didn't get to do this year because of the nature of COVID and some of the negotiation that's happening with the insurers. but we usually start preparing and reviewing planned finances in February so that we can finalize the cost projections by end of April. That's obviously been pushed forward this year, but something to keep in mind for next year's executives, or sorry, with you folks for next year, essentially for 2022. And then in May, we typically tend to wrap up and we introduce and are meeting with next year's executive team. A couple special considerations for you folks. So one of the things I'd like to recommend is just kind of regular touch bases, whether it's monthly or bi-monthly with the appropriate committee. You know, we found that with COVID, it was really hard to just keep in touch. We usually just pop by campus and say hello and see how folks are doing, but obviously that wasn't really possible this past year. So if things kind of continue in the same way that they did last year with virtual meetings, we'd love to just have kind of a consistent time frame that we can meet every couple of months, every month to 2 months, depending on whatever your schedule is, to make sure that we're keeping in touch with you and you're letting us know if there's anything that we could support you with, and vice versa. Another thing to keep in mind, which I mentioned earlier, is our virtual stakeholder meeting, which we are very excited to invite you folks to and hope that you can join us, and it'll be an opportunity for you to connect with some of your peers and counterparts from across the country. And then lastly, over the summer months, we would like to take the opportunity to present a couple of new services that we've been working on over the COVID months, which include a presentation on telehealth, as well as a presentation on a few new iterations of our legal service, which we are very excited about. So just to put on your radar a couple of the action items that we think will be coming up over the next couple of months. And with that, I am going to open the floor to questions, thoughts, comments, if you will, and I will stop screen sharing.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I know I think I experienced this exact same or a very similar version of it last year, but I always still learn. It's always nice to have that refresher on what student care is and how it operates. I love it. Yeah, are there any questions from the committee? Vice President Haddad, go ahead.
I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to thank you. That was like an awesome presentation, but lots of information that I used to like scrap to find was answered here. So thank you.
I'm so glad. And I want to pose to the committee, obviously, if you have questions that come up later, both Gabe, Corbett, and Almas have my contact information. I'm happy to drop it in the chat as well. You can always email me directly, and I'm happy to support. And yeah, if there's ever an opportunity for us to come in, and if you have, you know, special campus stakeholders that would benefit from, you know, an orientation session, obviously maybe less high level and more focused on the plan benefits and how to access the plan, always happy to come and support you folks. And I guess another kind of caveat to add is that I know there's a lot of work happening in supporting Indigenous students. That's also something that's hot on our radar, and we are actively working and engaging with our stakeholders to make sure that that category of students is effectively supported, both in being able to support them in opting out, recognizing and acknowledging that they do have coverage through their bands, as well as working with folks in ensuring that like communication and education is taking place so that Indigenous students are made aware of what benefits kind of exist through the plan that maybe aren't covered by the federal services that are available to them. So that's also on the roster of things that we're kind of working towards in the coming year. So.
Thank you so much. Vice President Pangura, you can go, you're on the speakers list.
First of all, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. And I was wondering if we can get access to this presentation afterwards, if you can send it to my email, because I had a couple of students who emailed me regarding opting out. So I think this will be really beneficial for me to go back and forth in case I need. Thank you.
For sure. I'll add a comment to that. I actually have a PDF iteration of this presentation that's a little bit more succinct, and it's like an actual booklet that has like paragraphs written out to explain everything that we discussed today. So I'll send you the PDF version once that becomes available. So I'll make sure to share that with you if you wouldn't mind distributing it to anybody else who would benefit from it. That would be awesome.
Thank you so much. That will be great.
Thank you so much. VP Equity, you can go next, or sorry, Vice President Dodd, you can go next.
Thanks. Yeah, I guess this is more so a question. I'm happy you brought up like Indigenous folk and like how that is on your radar. I did want to ask, were folks considering just like Black, Indigenous, and people of color in general, or are there more resources that are being accessible in terms of like racially and culturally sensitive resources or different like accessibility needs that are kind of on your radar, I guess? Such an oddly framed question, but I hope you understand what I mean. I could reiterate.
No, I completely understand and appreciate it. And I think it's definitely something that we're keeping in mind for the work that we're doing through the social collective. With respect to Indigenous student experience, one of the reasons why we've always had systems and procedures in place for this category of student, because there's a direct relationship between their experience and the healthcare system, because they have coverage through essentially a federal program that's managed via the province. And so our focus has always been to make it very accessible for these students to opt out should they choose. One of the things that we're evaluating is just looking at stakeholder engagement for this group, making sure that we're keeping ourselves well versed on that experience. And we've also we just want to get kind of a temperature feel of what's happening on the ground. I think a lot of the systems and procedures that were set up quite a while ago. And while they're still very much valid, I know that a lot of my peers have been doing work. So Kristen Foster, actually, funny enough, who is was essentially my predecessor, who has worked with the SFSS for many, many years, is actually taking that on as a special project. So hopefully there'll be some additional things that she'll be able to kind of bring back to the committee and share with you folks, but that's kind of one of the key projects that she's now working on in her new role with student care. So I hope that it helps answer your question, Mary.
Awesome. Vice President Provost.
Thank you. It's nice to see you, and thank you for the presentation. Like Gabe was also saying, I always learn like a lot. So since moving out of my student services role, one thing that I was doing just before that term ended, I was doing a digital services revamp, just with like, you know, making sure that students are aware, because I know I'm looking at it now, there's some posts going up, just like summer change of coverage period and things like that. So if there's any information that you think would be relevant, just in terms of like engaging with students to make sure that they know that they have access to do these things, like for opting out, or just like, because that's what we've been trying to do on our end, is just making sure like the information is accessible and online. That's the only way we can engage with membership right now. If there's anything that you think is like really needs to be prioritized in the next little while for like just information, or you want us to add things in our social media for our posts, or if you think anything's missing, I think you just forward that to Almas for now, and then they can set that up with our communications assistant and just kind of get all that information streamlined, I guess, online. Because I know there's a couple other things, especially with, we just posted something for the enhanced health and dental plan, and then we had some other things that I was looking at earlier this week for some of our other services regarding student care. So just wanted to note that here.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing. And that's a really great refresher. So like I mentioned, over the summer months, we will be finalizing the communications content. So that'll be the email roster that will be confirmed, that will be sent out to your students throughout the year, as well as sending you folks all of our like customized social media content for you. So I will share those with Almas, and she will distribute them. And if you folks want anything kind of changed or anything added, you're always welcome to let us know, and we'll do our best to try and accommodate that. And if it's obviously within like, if it's a reasonable request, our team will absolutely do it in making it exactly how you want it. And if you think there's something additional that could be added, we're always happy to include that. But you can expect over the summer months to receive like a nice kind of portfolio of communications content that will be available to you to share throughout the year where appropriate.
Oh, I muted myself instead of unmuting myself. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, cool. I saw your email regarding the stakeholders meeting, and I think that is something that we'll actually talk about as a committee and see who from our group would be able to represent the SFSS at that meeting. Yeah, I'm very excited about that actually. So you'll definitely hear from us on who our representatives will be.
So excited to hear that. And we obviously look forward to hosting you folks and connecting with you throughout the year. And fingers crossed if things kind of get back to normal and in some capacity by September, hopefully we'll be seeing you in person on campus. But yeah, I thank you all so much for letting me come and join you today and presenting and being such a wonderful audience. And I look forward to connecting with the committee in the future. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you so much. Always appreciate chat, or really always enjoy chatting with you.
Have a good rest of your meeting, folks. Take care.
Thank you. All right. That concludes our presentations portion of the agenda today. And now we can head into new business. All right, here we go. So our first item under new business today is 6.1, election of a vice chair of the executive committee. And I'm going to read the motion now. And I'll explain a bit about the motion once we have a mover and a seconder. Be it resolved to elect X as vice chair of the executive committee for the 2021-2022 elected term. Is there a mover for the motion?
Matt?
Jess moves.
Oh, okay. VP, Vice President Provost moves. Vice President De La Cruz, did you want a second?
Yes, please.
Okay, awesome. Thank you both. So here is what's going to happen. So we need to elect a vice chair for the committee. And of course, I'm the chair, but there may arise a situation or a portion of our meetings where I might not be able to chair. And in that event, we need to have someone designated as vice chair in order to take on that scenario if it ever happens. And so here's how the process is going to go for electing a vice chair in this meeting. So any one of you executives are eligible. And how the election will work is, firstly, I'll put out a call for nominations, and that'll be a verbal call. I'll do that 3 times as per Robert's rules. I'll say, I call for nominations, I call for nominations, I'll call for nominations. Anyone can put their name forward, or you can nominate someone else. And if you're nominating someone else, that individual who is being nominated needs to accept the nomination. If the election is uncontested, then the person who put their name forward, the sole person who put their name forward, automatically wins by acclamation. If it is contested, then each person has 60 seconds to speak to why they want to be vice chair. And then afterwards, we'll amend the X out of the motion to include whoever won. Any questions about that before we get started? Yeah, let's do it. So I'm gonna do my first call for nominations now. Are there any nominations for the position of vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Jess for vice chair.
All right, Vice President De La Cruz, do you accept that nomination?
Sure.
All right, the nomination has been accepted. I'm gonna put out my second call for nominations. Okay, third call for nominations.
I will also nominate Jess for the position.
Awesome, we have a seconder for Jess's nomination. Fantastic. All right, so that is the end of the 3 calls for nominations. That means that the position is uncontested and Jess is our only contender, which means that Jess has won the vice chair race by acclamation. And so congratulations, Jess, on your election to this position. At this time, we will now amend the motion to replace X with Jess De La Cruz. So at this point, I'm going to move to amend the motion to replace X with Vice President Events and Student Affairs, Jess De La Cruz. Is there a seconder?
Marie.
All right, Vice President Haddad seconds. Seeing as we just held the election, I am not going to open the floor to debate because there's nothing to debate. So we will put the question to a vote. This is an amendment to the main motion to replace X with Vice President Events and Student Affairs, Jess De La Cruz. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Awesome. All right, I'm lowering everyone's hands. Is there anyone opposed? Actually, no, there is no one opposed because everyone raised their hand. So that amendment carried unanimously. And we'll go back to the main motion. And the main motion reads, be it resolved to elect Vice President, Events and Student Affairs, Jess De La Cruz, as Vice Chair of the Executive Committee for the 2021-2022 elected term. we're going to put the main motion to a vote now. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. The motion is carried unanimously. I'm lowering everyone's hands now. All right, so that's that. That motion is carried unanimously. Congrats, Jess. Jess is now our vice chair. We'll move on now to our next motion on the agenda, which is, what is it? Committee at-large representative recruitment. So this was submitted by Corbett. Whereas, as per bylaw 4, section 11, subsection A, the Vice President, Internal and Organizational Development is responsible for overseeing the internal governing structures of the society, including the various committees of council. Be it resolved to mandate the VP, Internal and Organizational Development, Corbett Gildersleeve, to work with the council committee chairs to seek, identify, and recruit students to apply for council committees as student at large members. Excuse me. Is there a mover for the motion?
Jess moves.
Jess moves the motion. Is there a seconder? Or I'm sorry, Vice President De La Cruz moves the motion. Vice President Gildersleeve seconds. Thank you. Got to keep the formal meeting procedure up and thriving. Anyway, yeah, I feel like this motion is probably pretty self-explanatory, hopefully, but Corbett, did you want to say anything on this?
Yeah, it's my role, so my responsibility. So it's good to get it more formally tasked. And I've already been, on my way out of the VP finance role. I started creating some trackers and stuff to make this easier, especially for future VP internals. And we've got additional docs and stuff through other staff around council contact lists and such. So the goal ultimately would be make this a very easier and faster process each year. In the sense of like getting for like student larges in place, I will probably work with each chair more directly for that kind of stuff for recruitment and such, as opposed to using the nomination committee, because we found last year was a little clunky, that process. So I think it's more straightforward just to work with the chairs directly.
Awesome. Thank you. Is there any questions on the motion on the floor? Okay. I just wanted to say that I hopefully this process works a little more smoothly. I know that we did go through a nominating committee, or historically we have gone through a nominating committee to seek our student at-larges for committees. And I'm hoping that kind of just having one point of contact for all the committee chairs is going to help expedite and hopefully make the process a little less complicated than it needs to be. And it's fantastic that we now have a role like VP Internal to take on this work, which is nice. All right, I'm seeing no one on the speakers list, so we'll put the question to a vote at this time. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. All right. Matt, you're not voting in favor? Cool. Going to lower everyone's hands, and the motion is carried unanimously. We'll move on to our next motion, which is 6.3, and it's Communications Coordinator Hiring Committee. Now, I noticed that there's a typo in this motion, so we'll have to amend that afterwards, but I need to read the motion as is. So be it resolved to appoint Operations Organizer Jess De La Cruz and X to the Communications Coordinator Hiring Committee. Is there a mover for the motion?
Jess moves.
Vice President De La Cruz moves. Is there a seconder? Is there a seconder?
Corbett seconds.
Thank you. Vice President Gildersleeve seconds. So, okay, so where are my notes? So this motion is coming to the executive committee agenda as a, because our previous communications coordinator has left her position with the SFSS. And so it is now time to strike a hiring committee to replace that or fill that position in order to replace Sindhu, who was our last communications coordinator. And I'm looking forward to hopefully this being a good hiring process, because it is I would say, a pretty time sensitive position to fill, as our communications are one of the key tactics that we use to communicate with our membership and our students. So just as I guess a reminder, this is a union position, the communications coordinator. So as per the collective agreement, the committee is half employer reps, half employee, 2 from the employer side and 2 from the employee side. Jess has volunteered to be one of those employer reps, but we still need one more person. Now, if no one is available from the executive committee to be on this hiring committee, then Aisha, our operations organizer, has offered to fill up the other seat, as she is technically a representative of the employer. So I know many of us are on hiring committees ourselves. I know myself and Corbett are on another hiring committee. Matt and Marie are on one. Jess will obviously be on one. And so if no one else on the executive committee is available to fill the seat, then Aisha has offered. But I would like to put the offer out there now. Would anyone like to sit on the communications coordinator hiring committee with Jess? Or if you have any questions at all about the process, even, I'm totally here to answer those questions. Vice President Haddad, go ahead.
Yeah, when will the hiring take place? Sorry.
So the committee usually establishes a timeline on the process. So the first step would be the committee would have to meet and kind of do a review of the job description. And then after that is usually when you put out the job posting, which is, I don't know, typically for a job like this might be open for 2 to 3 weeks. And then interviews happen, which might take a week or 2 depending. And then depending on whether or not you do a second round of interviews, it may take a bit longer. So I don't know, the entire process could take up to a month or longer than that. Does anyone else have any questions? If you're even thinking about it, but you're kind of confused, maybe? Yeah, so this is one that we will likely start right away, because it is a time-sensitive position. Our communications department is quite vital to the SFSS. So just so everyone knows, and Marie, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna note that, yeah, I'm on another hiring committee, so I think it would be tough to do two. However, like if any help is needed, just let me know.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so if no one is interested, I guess I'll just pose the question. Is everyone comfortable then if Aisha takes that seat? Cool. Okay, and that's why I accidentally put operations organizer in front of Jess. So we'll have to amend that. So in that case, if that is the will of the committee, we will, I'd like to move to amend the motion to do two things. One, to strike operation organizer before Jess's name and replace it with VP events and student affairs. And then to strike X and replace it with operations organizer Aisha Khan. So I'm moving to make that amendment. Is there a seconder?
Matt?
Thank you. Vice President Provost seconds. Is there any discussion on this amendment? Okay, we'll put the amendment to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hands now. Okay, cool. The motion, I'm going to lower everyone's hands now, and the motion appears to have carried unanimously, or the amendment has carried unanimously. And so we'll move back to the main motion, which now reads in full: be it resolved to appoint VP Events and Student Affairs Jess Dela Cruz and Operations Organizer Aisha Khan to the Communications Coordinator Hiring Committee. Any last discussion on this motion? All right. Seeing none, we'll put the main motion to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Fantastic. I'm going to lower everyone's hands now, and that motion is carried unanimously. The main motion is carried unanimously as amended. Thanks, everyone. We'll move on to 6.4, which is appointing an Associate Vice President, University and Academic Affairs. And this was submitted by Serena, Vice President Baines. So whereas, as per Council Policies R17, titled Associate Vice President, Vice Presidents may appoint Associate Vice Presidents to assist in the duties of their respective executive office by nominating a member in good standing for the position. Whereas, as per Council Policies Rule 17, Associate Vice Presidents, nominations for the position of Associate Vice President shall be ratified subject to approval by the Executive Committee by majority vote. Whereas Vice President, University and Academic Affairs, Serena Baines, has nominated Priyanka Desha to serve as Associate Vice President, University and Academic Affairs. Be it resolved that the Executive Committee ratify the nomination of Priyanka Desha as Associate Vice President, University and Academic Affairs. Is there a mover for the motion?
Serena?
Vice President Baines moves the motion. Is there a seconder?
Marie.
Thank you. Vice President Haddad seconds the motion. And yeah, Serena, if you wanted to speak to the motion, the floor is yours.
For sure. So Gabe had messaged me about maybe having Priyanka as the Associate VP UAA, since she's been on the UAA committee longer than I've been, and she's been really involved in the committee and taking on projects and that kind of thing. So we thought that she'd be a great AVP. And I reached out to Priyanka, and she said she'd be down, and I think that she'll be great for the role.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And yeah, honestly, Priyanka, I know you're here with us today. I'm very excited that you are subject to ratification, which I hopefully will pass. You will be fantastic for the role. I know that, you got the most votes in the Senate election that just happened this past semester. You're also on SFU Community Trust. You ran for the Board of Governors. You were on UAA last year. You're very eager and enthusiastic to get involved. And honestly, I'm excited to work with you and for Serena to work with you as well. So I'm glad Serena nominated you for the position. Awesome. Does anyone else want to speak to the motion at hand? Okay, so seeing no more discussion, we'll put the question to a vote. Be it resolved that the Executive Committee ratify the nomination of Priyanka Desha as Associate Vice President, University and Academic Affairs. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Fantastic. I'm going to lower all of your hands, and that motion is carried unanimously. Congratulations, Priyanka. Associate Vice President Desha, as I'm going to start calling you in our meetings. Fantastic. Okay, we have more motions on the floor. Now we're going to move into the motions that were added to the agenda at the beginning, during the adoption of the agenda phase. And the first one, I believe, is Executive Committee merchandise. Scroll up in the chat to find that. Whereas past SFSS executives received branded merchandise for imprint, and we want to have current executive committees and SFSS excluded staff to receive a celebratory keepsake. Be it resolved to spend up to $1,200 from line item 886-17 for the purchase of the SFSS branded jackets from For Imprint for the executive committee and excluded staff for use at member-facing events and activities. Is there a mover for the motion? Thank you. Vice President Provost moves. Is there a seconder?
Yes.
Oh, I'm going to say Vice President Pangura seconds that because that's what I heard first. Okay, Matt, you have the floor as the mover of the motion.
Perfect, thank you. So there was an attached briefing note that I hope everyone took the time to read. It's pretty comprehensive. And so basically we wanted to, and sorry if there's background noise, there's like people walking around on my roof and it's annoying. But anyway, so myself and Jess was a big help on this. We contacted For Imprint and the background of like, we're trying to get these jackets and we went through a couple other places, but this seemed to be the most easiest and efficient way to get them, and also like one of the cheaper options. So if you look at some key considerations, since there's only 7 of us, it was hard to find a place that would I guess basically do custom jackets because we'll all have different names and positions, so it was hard to find a place that would be cheaper to do that as well. So we decided to go through For Imprint. This is also a place that we went through last year, and we decided on getting like a quarter zip like hoodie, and it's Champion, so it's pretty good. I liked it, and it comes in a couple different colors. So basically, our recommendation is like we want to get it for the executives, but we also thought it would be nice to get some for our excluded staff. So this would include our board organizer, our operations organizer, and our building manager, and there is a couple like extras that we could get as well, because it would just, I think it would make more sense to just buy 12, because if you look at the 7, the price is $613, which we could do that too, but we could also get 12 for like $816. And then so in the future, if we have like presenters come in or people, then like we can gift them with a jacket or something like that, because we'll have a few extras. And yeah, so that's kind of what I was thinking. If there's any thoughts or questions, or Jess, if I missed anything, please feel free to jump in. That's kind of what I have right now.
Thank you for that explanation. Vice President Dela Cruz, you have the floor.
So past board terms also was able to receive these jackets, and they also went through for imprint, and then we're considering other council members as well. And if they would like to have any type of merchandise, depending on what they want, they can work with us and we can help them prep a briefing note, help them go through this company if they want to. So we are considering our other counselors who are non-executives as well in this process. And I think it's really cool that we get to have something, because we did save a lot of money in the past year, especially we haven't had any in-person retreats because of COVID. We haven't been going to conferences or have had any in-person events. So I think this would be really nice.
Thank you. Vice President Haddad, you have the floor.
Yeah, super excited about this. I just wanted to thank Jess and Matt. Briefing note was really comprehensive and awesome, and like shout out to Jess because it's probably one of her first briefing notes. So good job.
I'll echo that sentiment as well. I opened the briefing note and I was like, wow, the amount of detail, the effort, it was flawless. Thank you. And yeah, I'm in agreement with the proposal as well, and I'm excited, hopefully pending the approval of this motion, that that they're going to look really good. And yeah, I'm excited to, you know, of course, to work with the rest of council to hopefully to get counselors some nice jackets as well. Any other discussion on the motion? Vice President Provost.
Yeah, I also just kind of want to add some clarification. So the motion does read up to 1,200. Just keep in mind that the quotes that we have right now, these are estimated quotes just because of the amount of like the sweaters, and then also like the size of the embroidery that's going to be going on it. It might change, or like the price might adjust based on like the amount of, I guess, embroidery, because what they have to do, they would have to make individual embroideries for like our names and things like that. So we put it up to 1,200 just in case. I don't think it's going to be 1,200, but just in case we have a little bit of a contingency just due to the embroidery fees, because there was an extra fee for like personalization costs. So I just wanted to give a clarification that it most likely we're not going to spend 1,200, but it's just up to, just in case.
That makes sense. Thank you, Matt, for clarifying that. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing no more discussion, I suppose it's time to put the question to a vote. So let me read the be it resolved clause one more time. Scroll up. Be it resolved to spend up to $1,200 from line item 88617 for the purchase of SFSS branded jackets from For Imprint for the executive committee and excluded staff for use at member-facing events and activities. All those in favor, please raise your hands now. Okay, I'm lowering everyone's hands, and that motion is carried unanimously with no opposition. Okay, now let me just pull up the next motion. All right, so this next motion is titled Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirited Folks, Statement of Support. Whereas May 5th was the National Day to recognize the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit, and transgender people. In this way, we want to recognize the ignored genocide against Indigenous peoples that has disproportionately affected and impacted Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit, and transgender folks. Be it resolved that the Executive Committee approves the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit, and trans statement to stand in solidarity and support with Indigenous families and communities affected. Is there a mover for the motion?
Marie.
Vice President Haddad moves. Is there a seconder?
Matt.
Thank you. Vice President Provost seconds. And Marie, as the mover of the motion, you have the floor.
Yeah, before we start, I do of course want to give a trigger warning, just in case. This is a really, really heavy subject, and we need to be really mindful of Indigenous folks right now. So if anyone's listening to this recording, please be mindful of that. Yeah, so I put this forward as a statement. I was really hoping for executives to be able to support it. Yeah, so a couple days ago, May 5th, is the National Day to recognize the missing Indigenous women, girls, my phone is going off, sorry, missing women, Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit, and transgender folk. It's something that we definitely need to acknowledge and support and amplify, especially since many sectors in SFU continuously silence, minimize, gaslight, and not acknowledge, the hardship that Indigenous folks are going through right now. So I think a way to redress this is to really amplify and center this discussion. So I do understand, I sent this through email. However, I thought it would be good if we could just spend like possibly 5 minutes going over it, reading it, and then we can have a discussion before we go into a vote. So I will put this in the chat. Give me 1 second. Yeah, it's in the chat. So please go ahead and open it. I could also share my screen, but whatever is good.
Thank you, Marie. So we'll take a couple of minutes to read it individually and then reconvene in a couple of moments. If everyone can indicate just in the chat when they're done reading it, that would be fantastic. Awesome. Does anyone still need a couple more moments? Okay. Vice President Provost, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to Marie and everybody else who kind of hopped on. I think also Jess and I think Serena, Gabe, like just everyone who supported like this statement. It means a lot to me. I actually was just thinking about the first time the FNSA held an MMIW event, which was like 4 years ago. And I remember that we went into the SFSS because we wanted support with booking a space for the vigil. And they said it was too political. And they said that it's not something that they think that they can put the SFSS name on. It actually kind of makes me a little bit emotional thing because I totally forgot about it. But it means a lot to see this statement come out from like the executive, because there has been lack of acknowledgement, and I always do my best to recognize like this work and stand with like Indigenous women and like support their work, and I'm consistently learning and trying to do better, especially as like Indigenous male, and learning my place to follow like those voices and do my best. But yeah, I know that's something that just like I thought about reading this, because it actually didn't hit me until I seen like the logo while I was reading it, that this was something that wouldn't have happened before. And I'm thankful to share space with folks who want to support these initiatives, because this is the kind of work that needs to be done so that it happens, and that we're consistently working towards amplifying Indigenous voices and supporting those community members, because these are hard topics and it has impacted you know, my family and my community in like a lot of different ways. So it hits close to home. So thank you for taking initiative on this, Marie. It means a lot to me.
Vice President Baines, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to Marie, Matt, and Jess for writing the gist of, or the most of this statement. It is really impactful, and I think y'all did a great job of writing it. There's a couple of things that I just noticed that I think I missed the first time I read it through. So maybe we can fix those small typos later. But overall, great job, and I think this is super impactful. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Vice President Haddad, you have the floor.
Yeah, I actually just want to address what you said, Matt. And like, I always appreciate you sharing, especially since like you don't have to as well. So I really appreciate you sharing the knowledge and contributing in like really proactive ways. It's very impactful. But I'm glad to amplify. And I just wanted to note that like this statement is a statement of amplifying. And we're not here to reinvent the wheel, but we're here to amplify Indigenous folks, especially the FNSA and ISC. So yeah, I wanted to note that, but yeah, just very appreciative for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to obviously speak in support of this statement. And I really want to thank Matt too for sharing. I think we, especially in the last year, maybe take for granted that the SFSS never paid attention to these topics, or as Matt just shared, intentionally tried to ignore them. And so it's so impactful. It's critical to recognize the impact that putting out statements of amplification such as this have in the community. And so I want to thank Marie for taking the charge on making this statement, and to everyone who contributed to it. I will be voting in favor of this statement. Did anyone else want to speak to the motion? Cool. I see plus in the chat from many people. Cool. Okay, if there is no more discussion, then we're going to put the question to a vote. So I'm going to read the be it resolved clause one more time. Be it resolved that the SFSS Executive Committee approve the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit and Trans statement, stand in solidarity and support with Indigenous families and communities affected. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Fantastic. Okay, lowering everyone's hands now. The motion is carried unanimously with no votes in opposition. Thank you, everyone. Now, so that, I believe, concludes new business, but we're doing pretty good for time. So would everyone be, would like maybe a 5-minute break to get up and stretch? Okay, cool. So come back at 1:27 p.m. All right, everyone. It's 1:27, so we'll reconvene the executive committee. If you're able, please turn on your camera, but if you're not, just give me an indication that you're here. Hey, Murray, are you there? I just want to make sure. Oh, okay. Okay, well, I'm gonna start our discussion on our 7.1, our discussion item 7.1, Access for All campaign. And Serena, Vice President Baines, you submitted this discussion item, so you have the floor.
Thank you. I'll try to share my screen if my internet will allow it. Can y'all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I brought up this discussion item because I also sent a screenshot of UVic's Society for Students with a Disability campaign where they were talking about the return to campus in the fall. A return to campus primer was shared by their university admin that outlined a bunch of really problematic stuff about their plan for return to campus in the fall. And since it was informed by all post-secondary institutions, it's likely that SFU will take a similar approach. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to really make a great briefing note about this. So I kind of just made a summary, and I can read through it for you folks, and then I'll ask some questions, I guess. So the Access for All campaign was created and spearheaded by the UVic Society for Students with a Disability in response to the COVID-19 Return to Campus Primer, published on April 30th. The primer was produced by BC Post-Secondary Institutions and the Ministry of Advanced Education. The primer claims to be informed by a commitment to protecting the health and safety and well-being of the campus community, yet the plan outlined will disproportionately impact disabled, neurodivergent, and international students. UVic has created a thorough plan of possible avenues through which students can collectively apply pressure to the institution, and they're looking to collaborate with other post-secondary institutions, as they let me know in a meeting we had together that UVic is more of a follower like SFU, so that they're not likely to make any changes without other institutions joining their campaign. So this is a brief timeline. It's all very recent, since May 3rd is when the campaign started. UVic has released a letter that they're still working on, but I think we could probably adapt for SFU. The letter, they have a bunch of demands in the letter as well that I can send to y'all after this meeting. And because a lot of this stuff isn't complete yet, that's why I haven't sent a lot of these links. And some of the things that I thought that I would bring to y'all, if you have any ideas, is what you think would be part of like an effective plan regarding avenues of pressure to pursue. And that's what I've included here. I'm going to connect with UVic at May 10th, which is their next meeting. Also, if anyone knows who is in charge of reopening, that would be amazing, because I've asked Romana and Aaron, no one, and Tracy, and they don't really know, or they haven't told me. But basically, the gist of it is they're planning for a full in-person return to campus. Residents will be full except for 1% that allows for isolation, but international students cannot isolate on campus, and they would probably have to pay out of pocket for rooms to isolate in. Another thing is that they said lecture halls of like 150 people or whatever is fine, and everyone just needs to sit in the same seat, which makes no sense. We know that a lot of people will have their first vaccination shot, but a lot of people who are immunocompromised, disabled, neurodiverse, for whatever reason, can't receive a vaccine, will be put at risk because of this plan, since they can't get a vaccine. And yeah, I think that's it. But if y'all have any questions, feel free to let me know and I'll try to clarify stuff.
Marie, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this forward, Serena. That's really concerning and like super problematic, especially to be putting like our most marginalized at risk is really upsetting to hear and honestly quite ableist. So yeah, I'm just happy to see that this is something that we're going to be discussing and supporting as well.
Vice President Provost.
Thank you. Thanks, Serena, for bringing this up. Like, I think this is really essential to support, because I think a lot of universities have been going through this with like, you know, very abrupt, very short notice, not a lot of information floating around about what the return to campus is going to look like. It's actually really concerning, even for myself. Like, there were some things that I've been thinking about that I wanted to, I think would be related to this as well, as like accessible vaccines. Like, this is the thing for me is like, and I know we talked about this at Wellness Working Group as well. It's just like the university, like the institution is putting the pressure on us to come back to school, you know, in maybe not the safest ways. Like, we're not going to have our second dose. Well, at least some people won't have their second dose, they'll only have their first dose. So we're a commuter campus, so everyone's going to be on the buses majority of the time. We don't know the class sizes or what is going to be expected of us. And from what I've heard, there's like going to be no hybrid. There's going to be no hybrid of online learning, or like everyone has to be in person. So we literally have no choice, even though, you know, it was kind of, pardon my language, it was a shit show last year trying to go to remote learning. And now, not having a choice or not having proper, I know there was like some town hall things going on, but like no one really knew about them. And there's only a couple groups on campus who have like these committee meetings who have been going to like some of this stuff. And, you know, what I've been thinking about is like, how can we, if they expect us to come back to school, then I think the university should be pushing the provincial government to like, if you're enrolled in the fall, that you're prioritized for a vaccine. For things like that, or making sure that we have adequate resources or things on campus, or COVID testing sites on campus. That was something that I was trying to do last year, like, you know, things like that. So, and they're just making it very difficult that we can't have these practical things in place. If they want us to be there, then why can't they have us there safely, or have things in place to make sure that, you know, we're going to be good to go? Because low-key, I kind of don't want to be in a room with a bunch of people that I don't know where they've been, with the potential of like either me giving it to someone who's immunocompromised, especially for like BIPOC communities. Some of us live in houses with like 8 other people, with our grandparents, with elders, with other people. And it's like, you're not taking that into account. And it's literally like the most annoying thing to me, that they just expect us to do this just because they think that they can. And, you know, just because it's all about money, and it's, yeah, it's ridiculous. So that's my thoughts on it.
Vice, is that, are you listed for a second time, Vice President? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that this was actually brought up within the SFSS BIPOC committee as well last, like literally at our last meeting. We were discussing how, you know, SFU is taking a really, really quick action into just like jumping into in-person things and are not acknowledging other folks. Like, even when we're discussing like mental health, like being in person is really nerve-wracking after a pandemic. Are there going to be supports? Are there going to be, you know, more understanding and leniency on terms of like professors' sides? Are there also going to be segments where we can have still virtual learning until people are comfortable to come back again in the springtime? So these are things that we really need to be amplifying. The BIPOC committee did call on the previous board to kind of discuss these things and take action. but of course there's so many things happening. So I think we should really take this upon ourselves and also bring this to council, have representation on the basis of like student representation in talking about things like, okay, you got your vaccine, but what now? You need to still be taking up like your precautions and stuff because there's other people who are at risk. And of course there are variants like just noted. But yeah, I'm more than willing to support on the basis of like making sure that this is accessible to all folks and like really being mindful of like how COVID is disproportionately affecting Indigenous and Black folk most of all. And just being really mindful of what that means when we are returning to back in person, and keeping in mind like what that means for, yeah, like what you noted, like pandemic anxiety or depression and that sort of thing.
Vice President Baines?
I think I have something in mind, but I think what y'all bring up is great points. I definitely should have included BIPOC focus well. I didn't know about that initiative coming out of the BIPOC committee, so it's great to know. Another thing, oh, I don't know if y'all saw, I don't have it on me, but UVic is mostly, has like a significant international population. So they stated that they wouldn't be offering hybrid unless like 50 or more international students couldn't come to campus. So obviously it's going to be super problematic, but I think it's great if we can like work together on maybe like a committee or a working group under, whether it be like UAA, or we could put it under mental wellness as well. Another thing is that like a lot of folk, yeah, an emergency response working group would be great. Another thing is that a lot of, oh, I'm not sure if we do. Another thing is that autistic people or people who are neurodiverse, it took them many months to, like they need routine to, and even I need routine to like adapt to school and that kind of thing. But it took them months to get adapted to remote, and now they're expecting people who are neurodiverse just to immediately adapt to in person. I think it's going to be really awful for people's mental health. But yeah, if anyone has any more information on the emergency response working group, maybe we could get that started again.
Yeah, I will just directly respond to that. The emergency response working group existed last year. It was led by previous Vice President External Samad Raza. So we would essentially just need to appoint a new lead on that working group and can get that kick-started once again. It was a working group under UAA. So there's that. Sorry, I've lost track of the speakers list. One moment, please. Vice President Gildersleeve.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this in. I'll just add my 2 points of I think that we should reach out to GSS, the Faculty Association, and TSSU to see how they're feeling about all this change, and because greater solidarity I think will be more effective.
Thank you.
That's all I had to say.
That's a good idea. Thank you. I just want to note a note that was made in the chat. Marie just mentioning, I just want to also know, I hope we find a way to avoid international folks being harassed in regards to COVID, the possibility of not having proof for a vaccine if they took it in their home country. Corbett said GSS, the Graduate Student Society, TSSU, and the Faculty Association. Vice President Provost.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, yeah, the emergency response working group was struck due to like COVID, like 19 related issues, or like even like stuff like Food Hub or things that students needed like right then and there when COVID first hit last year. So I think it would be good to, if this campaign or this support, the work that we can do could probably run under that and be most like appropriate, but it could also go somewhere else, or that's just like my thoughts.
Thanks. Vice Marie is also saying in the chat, I think we should also have a consultation process amongst marginalized groups with their worries regarding going back in person and a widespread Google form for students. That's a good idea. Yeah, so like a survey, UVic has some survey questions already that we could use if they are appropriate. That's awesome. Alma said, I would like to bring into your notice the email sent by mature disabled students to Senate candidates. Okay, so Marie, go ahead.
Sorry, everything is good now. Yeah, in terms of consultation processes and reaching out to groups, I was thinking like SOCA, FNSA, you know, the international student group, like that sort of thing. I'm more than happy to help and kind of lead that consultation process. Additionally, if you need help with like the survey creation and just making sure that it's like accessible and like holds like an intersectional equity lens, I'd be more than happy to help you create it, Serena. I know you like wrote that there's like good examples. We could totally use that. But yeah, just let me know how I can help, but I'm more than happy to support this and kind of be involved.
I'm speaking this whole time and I was muted. Is anyone else on the speakers list or would like to put themselves on the speakers list? Serena.
I just wanted to ask for the emergency response working group. That's something I would have to make a motion for on council, right? For the next meeting?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
For the emergency response working group, that's a motion I would have to bring to council. Is that correct? To like appoint a chair to it?
I think it would actually be UAA because it was struck under UAA. So maybe at like your first meeting, but you could always. Actually, I don't think there would be a problem with bringing it to council, as council can just pass motions on behalf of committees.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
Jeff
Thank
says
you.
committees take too long though. So yeah, council's fine. Vice President Pengura, you're on the speakers list.
Yes, so I wanted to bring into your attention that I had received an email from one of the mature disabled students, and I wanted to talk about this for really long, but thank you so much, Serena, for bringing this up. I feel like this was very important. And also in regards to the vaccination proofs for international students, I believe that every country is giving them vaccination proofs, but there is no way to rectify if they're actually genuine. So this one's a very crucial issue for now. And I feel like it's very important that we take disabled students as the center, because all of us might be able to attend in-person classes, but there has to be some or the other ways through which we can help support their learning, even if we have to be virtual or have like a hybrid system where people who have been vaccinated can come in person and attend, whereas the disabled students can choose the virtual option for some courses at least.
Thank you very much. Can we, I guess at this point, can we go over action items out of this just so we can put those in the record? One of them was to look at UVic's survey, right? To see what questions we could use for our own survey. Marie brought up a very good point, or a point around consultation with student groups regarding their concerns for a fall return to campus. So let me write this down, hold on. Is there anything I'm missing? Yes, you've been writing them down. Cool. And what is it? Bringing the emergency response working group motion to council. Cool. Vice President De La Cruz.
And Corbett, if you can, talk to TSSU, GSS, and the Faculty Association.
Cool. Are you able to write that down too on the action item list, Jess? Nice. Vice President Haddad.
Yeah, I just wanted to summarize it. So first, I guess we would take this to council, and then if it got passed, we would spark a working group, correct?
Yeah, or
Okay.
reignite one that already exists, the emergency response working group.
Perfect. I think it would be best to like hold a meeting there first and then like invite certain representatives if anyone wants to come to like the working group as well, and just like start preparing 3 different things. So it's the survey, actually 2 different things, the survey and then the consultation processes, and then to actually start reaching out. I think we need to start doing this like ASAP though, because obviously we only have like a couple months to really kind of work this out. And I know students are really depending on this. So I think it'd be good if we can like have some form of like meeting early next week to kind of just like bridge this all together and make a plan. But if anyone needs help with a briefing note to bring to council, just let me know.
Thank you. All right. Are we feeling comfortable with those action items? We know what we're taking out of this. Awesome. I want to thank you, Serena, for bringing this item forward again. Cool. We have 10 more minutes. Well, we might have to extend the meeting, but I would like to move on to 7.2, which is Executive Committee Annual Plan. And this is more of a reminder. This was submitted by me, and this is more of a reminder than anything. But because I'm aware that a lot of us are already working on an annual plan for the Executive Committee. But the Executive Committee should be compiling an annual plan of things that each of us are going to be working on this year within our respective portfolios, but also things we would like to work on collectively. And that this annual plan, hopefully we can bring it forward to council for the next meeting on May 19th, which is not next week, but the following week. And so I initially put this on the agenda before we actually started working on it. So I guess this is more of a reminder for folks that if you can start adding your bit to, we already have a shared Google Doc, to continue adding to that. And over the course of next week, I'm actually going to set a deadline here for Wednesday, because that's when the agenda item deadline for council is. So ideally, if we can try and work on the annual plan on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and get it completed by Wednesday, that is ideal to get it to council by the first meeting. Vice President Baines.
I've been like moving my stuff off of Marie's doc into like my own document like regarding the annual plan. And I found it, if like other folk are looking for a way to format it, I found that the like exit report style works for me personally. Like it has like the summary, timeline, next steps, points of contact, and that kind of thing. But yeah, I've been updating it so far, and if anyone needs any help, just let me know.
Thank you so much. I'd actually love to see that. That's awesome. Any other questions on the Executive Committee Annual Plan? Okay. Well, if there are any questions, let me know. And of course, again, Maria has been a huge help on this with that document that she created to help us format our platform points from the election and projects we want to work on. So thank you, Marie. Okay, cool. Item number 7.3, Council Committee Annual Plans. This was also submitted by me. On the topic of annual plans, I just wanted to, I guess, plant the seeds of this thought in your guys' minds around that. As execs, we all chair our own different committees. So, you know, as president, I chair council, exec, and HRP subcommittee. VP Finance, you chair the VP Finance and Services Committee, or Finance and Administrative Services Committee, and then, you know, everyone else has their own. And, you know, there are some committees that all of us chair by default in policy, but there are some, I'm sure some of you will probably end up chairing 1, 2, or 3 committees. I know that's what I did last year. I was chair of 3 committees. I know it's going to take a little while to actually get the students at larges, the process for appointing them, probably a little while. But I wanted to you guys to start thinking about what specific projects you might want your committees to work on, and kind of timelines and kind of the specifics about what projects you want your committees to work on in respect to their individual mandates. And just begin brainstorming. And for all of you, you will also be required to do an annual plan, much like we're doing here with the executive committee. So just start brainstorming projects, put it in a Google Doc, and you can do it by bullet points at this point, honestly. Just start thinking about what you might want to do. Ideally, once you actually do have students at larges and you have actual members of the committees appointed, it should be a collaborative process in terms of you should probably have a meeting, one of your first meetings dedicated to brainstorming and setting goals and establishing timelines and creating guidelines as a group in terms of what you want to do as a committee for the year. So start initiating this process now. I think it'll save you a lot of time going forward. And I think as we're in this kind of like first, second, third week of our term, it's probably the best time to do it. Because things will get busy and you'll run out of time, just me. So is there any questions on that? That kind of makes sense to everyone? Next. Okay. We'll move on to our next agenda item then. And, you know, before I actually move on to that, I'm noticing the time. We have about 3 more discussion items and an in-camera portion of the agenda. So I'm actually going to move to extend the meeting. I'm going to move to extend the meeting by an hour. I don't think we're going to use the full hour. I'm just doing that in case so we don't have to move to extend for a second time. So I'm going to move to extend the meeting by 1 hour. Is there a seconder for the motion?
Matt?
Vice President Provost seconds. This is a non-debatable motion, so we'll put the question to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hands now. Fantastic. I'm going to lower all of your hands now, and that motion is carried unanimously. Thanks, everyone. And so we'll move into our next discussion item, which is 7.4, Performing Arts Project. Now, I actually have something I'd like to share, a screen share. Can everyone see that? It says SFU Kickstart or Campus Kickstart. Cool. So Jess and I met with some folks who run the Student Experience Initiative. Excuse me, the kind of main lead on that, her name is Laya. And they wanted to talk to us about this new initiative called the SFU Campus Kickstart. It doesn't really have, well, I don't think this is actually what it's called. They're still trying to come up with a name. For now, they're kind of temporarily calling it the Performing Arts Project. But from the information that I have and that Jess and I gathered, they're looking for ways to try and brighten up our campuses once we return in the fall. And so let me go through, I guess, some of the main points on this PDF. So I'm just going to read what it says here. The Kickstart would consist of a dynamic slate of artistic performances that will populate open spaces located in site-specific areas on campus to enrich the social fabric of the university-wide campus experience through live music, song, dance, film, digital art, and poetry, reflecting the core values of equity, diversity, and inclusion, aiming to elevate, the collective spirits of all. So the idea here is that they want to try and develop a program whereby there kind of just be spontaneous performances happening in different outdoor or indoor locations on campus. And that is really to try and liven up the space and, try and mitigate some of the, I guess, anxiety that might be existent during a potential, well, not potential, a fall return to campus, as we know that is happening. So they said that they would like to try and do this in fall. They don't think that it's going to happen in September just because of COVID, but they'd like to try and get something like this up and running. They were saying around post-Thanksgiving to try and get this program up and running. Now, they were discussing with us sites that they thought would be good to do this type of thing in. So they identified, many different site-specific locations on campus to figure out where would be good to have these kind of spontaneous performances. And I'll kind of talk about that more in a minute. The idea of this would be that it would happen during times where students likely wouldn't be in class or at work. So during lunchtime, a Friday afternoon, that type of time frame. And so I'm going to stop sharing. I just wanted to use that slide because I thought it would be a nice visual. However, here is some of the, I guess, asks of us that came out of that meeting. They wanted to talk, they asked us if we would be interested in the student union building being a location where this type of programming would be a good fit for, seeing as the sub likely would be open in September. And the feeling that I got is that they would like to see us financially contribute to the program. Now, I know Jess has more to say to this. So I'll let her go first, but then I do have a couple of other points that I'd like to make. So Vice President Dela Cruz, you have the floor.
So for other context, like some of these folks were from SFU Woodward's cultural program who brought this up. They would choose high-five traffic areas where people can witness, experience some form of artistic expression, such as music, dance, and anything visualized. I talked about COVID-19 during that meeting with them. They would be hoping to do this post-Thanksgiving weekend this year. They also asked for us to use the student union building as a space, and they wanted to tour the student union building. I do have some issues with their request. It is also monetary, so that's like the first thing. I would specifically like to focus on SFSS membership first and their use of the space, because this is theirs. This is not SFU Woodward's. And there are so many other students who haven't even been to the sub in the first place, let alone campus. We also need to ensure a grand reopening first, and even so, a soft opening. in a COVID safe way, because I think for me that this is while it is a really great idea to liven the space on campus and the culture, it doesn't seem like a high priority to me. I want to get students safely on campus to get their education first and have high stakeholders who have space in the student union building and have our SFSS membership use this building first before any other external SFU partners. They did ask monetary funding from Joy Johnson, who will still need to approve that budget as well, but they would be asking for more. I just don't see this really happening post-Thanksgiving even, because we can't even record the artists' performances just because of like contract and stuff. It is a good plan, but I don't think it's high priority. I also wanted to like work on a sub reopening plan for everyone. I don't know if that will like if this would change that or affect that in any way, but would love to hear everyone else's thoughts.
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback off of what you said there, Jess, for just one moment. My thoughts are that, you know, even if this was something we wanted to consider, I honestly don't think we're in a place right now to say yes or no to what we're going to use the student union building for. I think we barely know what our operations and our programming are going to look like. So it's hard for us to say, for us to say to SFU, yeah, you can use our space for this. So that's kind of one point. And regarding the financial contribution, I mean, at the end of the day, that is a decision for council to make. However, I would like to, first of all, like to know more about it. And I know they're coming out with a more detailed proposal. And pending that, I think that's a decision where council would need to decide whether or not to financially contribute. And ideally, I would like them to come to a council meeting and make a pitch on why we should be supporting this. The idea in principle is nice, but I'd like to see it a little bit more of the logistics. Vice President Haddad.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think they need to come and present to council, because this isn't a decision that we can only take through, and council needs to make that decision collectively. I do agree that I would enjoy or think it's necessary to have more information on it. My only thing on my mind is I think it's like really hard to commit to something like this with so many unknowns about the pandemic right now. And just what we were talking about with our worry about rushing into things like students on presence on campus with COVID. So I think we really need to, you know, stay consistent with that and really prioritize student health. This, of course, could definitely be a thing, especially if council's interested in it. Definitely could be a thing for later, of course. We just need to be first, like, having student safety on our minds first. Secondly, we need to be re-inviting the Rotunda group into the sub and making sure that they have everything they need and that they are, you know, feel comfortable in their space, I think, before introducing any other stuff. That doesn't mean to say that it's like a no, or that we can't support it or support it in another time when things are fully open and things are consistent and good to go. I just think we need to be focusing on like marginalized groups right now, especially on within the sub, as they haven't even been introduced into the sub. And many things regarding that may come up in terms of like financial support, which is our first priority, of course. So that is something. In regards to touring the sub is already super constricted in who can go in and out. I believe it was something like 7 people can only be in the sub. And like there's staff in the sub as well. So we need to be really mindful of our staff as well being in the sub and if they're comfortable with those things. But those are just a couple notes, I think. I think we shouldn't jump into something too quick and just be really diligent with how we're thinking about this and be consistent and prioritize, you know, student health and marginalized students first, for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, just as saying they wanted a tour of the sub, and my first instinct was our safety plan doesn't allow for that right now. The pandemic is still too bad to let people into the building who aren't in there for an essential purpose. So it seems like many of us share the same sentiments around this. Or did anyone else want to make a contribution to the discussion? Does anyone have any questions about anything regarding this? Everyone has already been said, says Corbett in the chat. All right, so I told Laya that I would get back to her on the thoughts of the executive committee, but I just want to ask, is everyone comfortable with the sentiments that have been expressed here in this meeting right now? Okay. Thank you. I've made note of everything that has been said, and I will write that email response. Thank you, everyone. Our next discussion item is 5.7.5, which is Campus Public Safety Initiative, and this was submitted by Serena.
Yeah, so I had a meeting with Andrea Ringrose, who is the Campus Public Safety Director and the acting senior director since there's been a leave. I'm just looking for my work report so I can find the notes on it. Sorry, give me 1 second. Okay, perfect. So it was kind of just an introductory meeting about initiatives that we could work together on. And she mentioned a few things that I thought was interesting, so I thought I'd bring it to the group. First of all, her background isn't in traditional law enforcement. It's in psychology, mental health, international studies. She also did some work with sex workers in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and other initiatives, but she wants to take like a different approach to public safety organizations. And she mentioned a few things that I thought I'd bring up. We spoke about a crisis prevention or crisis response team that SFU currently has, and she wants it to be more integrated and 24/7, so students have someone to go to if they're in crisis, because we know that sometimes housing counseling is kind of not great at that kind of thing. But she wants it to be more focused on students because it's currently focused on faculty and staff. And she mentioned Matt by name, and I messaged Matt about this yesterday, that she'd like to be on the wellness working group because her and Martin, the director of health and counseling, have been in conversations about this crisis intervention team and what it could possibly look like. So I think that'd be a good opportunity to get a crisis intervention team that doesn't include security. She mentioned that she'd like to see social workers, psychiatric nurses, and that kind of thing. Another thing was there's currently a student safety engagement program, and there's been a lot of turnover. There's a few volunteers still, but basically they can contribute to the safe walk and typical security, but she wants to build more meaningful initiatives like bystander intervention training. And this is something that I thought I'd bring up to Marie specifically. I think it would be a great opportunity to give them better training, especially since they're going to FIC, to give them more opportunities for payment and for work on campus. I think it would be a great opportunity to replace whatever training that they have currently. with better, and she wants like bias training. She wants bystander training, mental health training, that kind of thing. And she's also open to expanding the program to have a larger scope. So as opposed to just like safe walk and typical security, she wants something more meaningful that, this is like a quote, equipping people with a tighter social fabric in the community that allows people to feel safe on campus. I was skeptical going into this meeting, and I told her that. I was like, look, I'm not for police and that kind of thing, and spoke to her about police brutality and that kind of thing. And she didn't become defensive and that kind of thing. And it seems like she has some experience with mental health and prioritizing marginalized communities. And she spoke about lived experience and that kind of thing. So I think she could be an ally. It's not to say that she's for defunding or abolition or anything like that, but I think it would be a good relationship to see through further and maybe have more meetings with her to discuss possibly what our options are. And if y'all have any ideas, feel free to list.
Thank you very much. Vice President Haddad, you have the floor.
Yes, I do have a couple questions. Sorry, you were saying training in relation to who again? Sorry, Serena.
Training in relation to, let me see. I think it was in relation to, I think it was like, I'm trying to remember exactly, but it was in specific to her student safety engagement program. These people who used to act as like security officers, safe walk, people who weren't exactly security, that were more like students.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I do have a couple things to say to that. First off, like, I do want to acknowledge that, you know, social workers can also be racist and also cause equal harm. So I know that like social workers, like their jobs and stuff are kind of being like re-questioned and that sort of thing. I do understand like we need to be like putting together really a working group to rethink and reimagine what this is. I do also want to refer to our issues policy regarding policing and militarization. And we specifically noted that, like, you know, a big thing that we're aiming for is to defund to abolition. And a really big part about that is that, you know, encouraging an increase in training and an increase of other different things is not as impactful as doing reconstruction with systems of policing and other systems that specifically get down on Indigenous, Black, POC, and other marginalized individuals. So I think we need to be really, really mindful of this. I would love to have a meeting with her. I would love to see what she has to say. If you want to like call another meeting or see what she has to even say in the wellness group, if folks feel comfortable enough. But I do just want to note that like what I'm hearing is more like, let's reconstruct the system, which is not productive. Like we actually need to be looking at like, sorry, reform, I mean, we need to be looking at reconstruction and that sort of thing. So those are my only ideas, kind of thing. I do, however, am pushing and really focusing on community-based safety and that sort of thing. So we could be looking at different modes of that. I do want to note that there was a report that recently came out from Toronto that said that, you know, with first calls regarding like wellness checks, that they were sending social workers over more, and like incidents of violence have been going down. I think we could take this ideology and kind of apply, but doing it in a more constructive way as well. But just like those things to think about, right? Since we're taking more of a stance regarding this stuff. And I just really think that we need to take a strong stance as of now in this year for more progressive work to be done in the future this stuff's not going to be fixed in a year kind of thing, but it's really important to be really diligent in these conversations. That being said, I'm more than happy to provide resources regarding policing, abolition, transformative justice, that sort of thing, for us to have like a well understanding of it. But yeah.
My mic on. Vice President Dela Cruz.
So we always talk about like not wanting to reinvent the wheel, right? As a collective. And a lot of the things that she is bringing up that she wants to happen is already happening on campus. And we have to make sure that these groups and their work are amplified and that there are actually staff who are actually trained to do this already. So one example, actually I have two examples, would be SVSPO. So this is the Sexual Violence Support and Prevention Office. Paula is an amazing director for this. I used this before when I needed this, and if they can work together, if she wants to work with them, I think that would be good if there are any other programs that they have as well. And then the second program with student involvement and staff is the, did I send the right one? Yeah, is the Active Bystander Network. I'm not sure how active they are right now, but I do know that they've been putting out so much social media content about how literally anything regarding to sexual violence. And these are already initiatives that are happening on campus. And I want to make sure that these groups are well supported and that these folks have the right people in it as well. And if we can work together rather than doing something else again and again of the same thing of like what we all collectively want to do, I think that needs to be considered and put into discussion.
Vice President Provost.
Yeah, I just kind of want to add my comments on this just regarding like the wellness working group. I just let Serena know that I would like to meet with them first before inviting them to the wellness working group, because like even for that, there was discussion from the working group that there was another person who wanted to be invited there to like present, but then it was based on consensus, because that's how I run that working group. Even if one person doesn't feel safe or comfortable with it, then I don't bring them in at all, because that's not up to me. So I'd like to kind of gauge that conversation and then bring it to the wellness working group folks to have that discussion. If they're okay with that, then I wouldn't mind, but I kind of want to hear a little bit more and just kind of have that initial conversation. But I already talked about this with Serena, and I think we're going to set something up. So.
Okay, so I'm hearing that multiple of you would like to have a meeting with this individual before kind of deciding or moving forward with anything else. Marie, is that something that you would want to be a part of as well? It sounded like. So maybe Matt, Serena, and Marie, and even I would like to be involved with this if possible, if that's all right with you three. We can set up a call with her. Okay, perfect. Serena's saying I can set up the next meeting. That would be wonderful. Okay. Thank you, Serena, for bringing this item forward. Did you or anyone else want to make any last comments? Go ahead, Vice President Baines.
This is kind of unrelated, but for the steering committee on safety as well, she's looking to like, she's really worried about it as well, and she wants to make sure that it doesn't result in a report and something else. So I just wanted to mention that she could be an ally on that steering committee that we reach out to, in addition to like Erin and anyone else and all the students on it.
That's really good to know. Fantastic. And she's on the steering committee right now? Okay, can you please, what is her name again?
I'll post it in the chat. Andrea Ringrose.
Oh, Andrea. Okay, cool. Jess is asking in the chat, what steering committee is this? This is the Community Engagement on Personal Safety Steering Committee. It was a steering committee that was struck after the December 11th arrest to do a review and consultation process on how to change our policies and procedures at SFU around safety. Okay. It's a community engagement on personal safety steering committee. That's what it's called. Yes. Okay. That concludes discussion on this item. Our last discussion item is 7.3 on the audit. So Vice President Gildersleeve.
Yeah, I just wanted to let everyone know that the summer audit, auditors have already submitted. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear that sign in the background, but if you need me to speak up, let me know. So our auditors have already sent out a letter to get the process started. So they sent out a couple different documents to Aisha, to Almas. I think Gabe, do you get one as well?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, and also our finance manager email, which is no longer in play. And it's just basically the same process they do every year. There's an engagement letter where it's like they wish to engage us on this process or whether we engage them. Some forms you have to sign to give them permission, to give the bank permission to give them financial records. And they'll also be working with SFU. I think also signing for SFU to give them records as well. And there's also a list of what they want to go through, which is being handled and prepped already by our financial coordinators. So we just have to basically sign the forms, the relevant forms, and send them out. I think I can still do that for next week. And the process itself usually takes a couple of months. Last year was a little bit of a challenge because we literally were doing our administrative restructuring right at the start of our audit, and COVID delayed a lot of things. This year it's a little bit, I think they're also using some kind of portal, like a website portal for information stuff. So it's a little bit more, hopefully more efficient and easier for them to do the audit. But yeah, generally it takes a couple months because we sometimes have to find, documents or find corrections or find backup information and stuff related to their requests. And then we will get a draft report of the audit, draft financial statements rather, as well as a list of things they found that they want to gives us perspective, like a heads up on, like this particular issue might be an issue for X, Y, or Z reasons and stuff. And then we as a organization can respond to that with changes we want to make or not make. So that's just a very high level thing of the whole process. I expect as a past VP Finance to help out a lot with this, to answer questions as necessary. But the vast majority of work tends to be done by the financial coordinators because they're the ones that also handle all the books and stuff. I'll also be involved to a certain extent as well. Yeah, and maybe the president might be called in from time to time. We'll see how the auditors go and what questions they like to ask. So we'll do our best to keep everyone updated. So that's really about it. There was nothing really fancy today. Just wanted to let exec know. And I'll probably do some similar type of conversation at council at the first meeting. And if we can, we might, if timing works nicely, we might even get the auditors come in and do the presentation for them.
Sounds good. Thank you, Corbett, for that update. Does anyone have any questions for Corbett on the topic of the audit? Okay. Thank you again, Corbett. And if I'm not mistaken, that's our last discussion item. And we still have one more thing on our agenda, which is an in-camera portion. So I'm looking at item number 8, which is in-camera 8.1. So be it resolved to go in camera for the remainder of the meeting. Is there a mover for the motion?
Jess moves.
Vice President De La Cruz moves. Is there a seconder?
Corbett seconds.
Vice President Gildersleeve seconds. Thank you. So yeah, we have one in camera or confidential item to talk about in this meeting, staff acknowledgements. And for folks who aren't members of the executive committee who are here, we're just going to go in a breakout room and talk on this item and then come back afterwards. So we'll pause the recording, talk, and then come back for the rest of the meeting. So we'll move to a vote on this item. Be it resolved to go in camera for the remainder of the meeting. All those in favor, please raise your hands. It's all right, Almas, I saw your hand. Okay, I'm gonna lower all your hands. That motion is carried unanimously. And we're gonna go in camera at this point in time. So I'm just gonna make the breakout room and pause the recording. Looking at motion 9.1, be it resolved to go X camera. Do I have a mover?
Marie.
VP Haddad, is there a seconder?
Alma seconds.
Thank you. Vice President Pangura seconds. All those in favor of going X camera, please raise your hand now. Oh, where's Serena? Maybe we lost her.
You can't see me?
She's right here.
Oh, LOL. No, I can see you. I can see you.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to lower everyone's hands. Motion carried unanimously. Okay, so at this point, we also have on our agenda 30-minute Q&A. This is for any guests who wanted to ask us any questions. I think the only guest here is Priyanka. I don't know if you happen to have any questions for us. Not, it's totally cool. Okay, cool. We will move into our announcements then. So 11.1, next executive committee meeting. I wanted to, there isn't a set time. I figured that this was set up as our first executive committee meeting, but seeing as classes will be starting again next week, we might have to figure out all of our class schedules. So I'll be sending out a when to meet to all of you probably next week and try and fill it out as soon as possible once you get it so we can figure out our standing executive committee meeting time. And secondly, 11.2, if you are not taking, okay, first of all, let me ask the question. Is anyone here not taking classes this summer? Okay, Marie, I'll need to link with you because you need to pay your student society fee in order to remain eligible to sit on the executive committee.
Can you just take it out of my next pay?
I believe so. You just, we'll need to talk to David, our finance coordinator, to make sure that that happens.
Sounds good.
So just if I forget, Marie, just remind me to send him an email with you CC'd on it explaining that that needs to happen. Okay, we'll move into adjournment now. 12.1, be it resolved to, oh, sorry, wait, Serena asked, how soon do I have to make a decision on that? Whether or not you're taking classes, you mean, in the summer?
Yeah, because I have a bursary that might end because I'm graduating from my program technically, but I'm reactivating. So I have to wait to hear back from them what my financial situation is going to be in this summer. So I'm waiting on them to either take the class or not.
I think as long as probably after the withdraw deadline is probably in and around the time when you would have to make that decision. Yeah, that's what I want.
Sounds good.
Cool. Yeah, so that's still a couple of weeks. Okay, and that, sorry, my brain froze there for a minute. Anyway, we'll go to 12.1. Be resolved to adjourn the meeting at 2:43 p.m. Is there a mover? VP Provost moves. Is there a seconder?
Marie.
VP Haddad seconds. No discussion on adjournment. We'll put the question to a vote. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, please raise your hand. All right, no opposition to this motion, so it carries unanimously. That's our first executive committee meeting, guys.